Fort and O'Brien, ESPN Evansville 105.3, online, ESPNEvansville.com. Ryan O'Brien, Jimmy Ford, and Gavin. Special guest with us in the studio, Dave Johnson, former columnist for the Evansville, former sports writer for the Evansville Courier-Press. How long were you with them, Dave?
31 years.
31 years. Retired, what'd you say, 7 years ago? 7 years ago. And is now just an encyclopedia's worth of knowledge for Bosse Field, which will celebrate its 100th anniversary on June 17th. And that's the main reason we brought Dave in was to talk about some of the history that goes on inside those walls of Bosse Field. And I remember we were actually just talking right before we went on the air here that you're not originally from the Evansville area.
Right.
You're originally from...
I'm from Monmouth, Illinois, which was almost to Iowa, Cub country.
Okay. We're an affiliate for the Cubs now.
Yeah, I'm very impressed by that. That's cool.
Yeah, Gavin's a monstrous Cubs fan, and so is Bobby, actually, for that matter. We got a lot of Cubs fans
and
in the
I know
building.
the Cardinal fans really appreciate it. That's the best part. I've been a Dodger fan 60 years, and I get a little tired of Cardinal fans.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you
especially in October.
He comes in, and the first thing he tells me is, I got a Brett Favre jersey hanging up behind me, my son's jersey, and he's been shopping at Goodwill. It's all great. All right, so big Bears fan, now he's ripping on the Cardinals fan. I like this guy.
I remember Bosse Field is obviously celebrating its 100th anniversary. June 17th, the official day of its 100th anniversary. And I still, to this day, Jimmy and I were talking about it in the previous segment, you know, my wife and kids and I will go to some Otters games throughout the course of the season. But my first memory of Bosse Field was back when the Triplets were in town. And my dad took me to a game, and I think at the time I was young enough, like the only reason I wanted to go was because the San Diego Chicken was in town.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my dad bought me a Triplets pennant, and you got in line to have the San Diego Chicken autograph it for you. And I laid it down with the face up. He flipped it over and signed the other side. And I couldn't so I got home and I tried to copy his signature on the other side, ruined the whole damn thing. But I think everybody in this area, you can ask them a memory of Bosse Field, something will jump out. But this thing has hosted not just baseball, but Jimmy and I were talking a little earlier off the air, and I asked him if he realized, and maybe you can expand on this a little bit more, Dave, we had technically an NFL team that called Bosse Field home back in the in the teens, the
22 and 23. It was called the Evansville Crimson Giants.
Yeah.
It was the name of the league was the American Professional Football League.
Yeah, it was the early
But it became the NFL.
Yeah.
And they played home games at Bosse Field. I think they were 3-0 there the first year, and then they kind of disappeared.
Kind of fizzled out. Yeah.
Well, I know they staying on the football thing. They've had a couple of high school games, or at least one that I can remember very recently. Might have been last year before. Memorial had a game out there. Did they do that a lot back in the day, as they say?
Yeah, back Central had its home games there, all the way back into the 30s and into the 60s. I came in 76. I know they were still playing there in the 60s, and I remember covering a soccer game there between U of E and Indiana. Seems like it was in maybe 1980, something like that. IU was ranked number 1, and that was a big deal. I think there were like 4,000 or 5,000 fans that came for that. But really, Bob Greasy, Rex Mundy Monarchs played their home football games there. I mean, that's where he played. He played baseball and football in high school at Bosse Field. So I mean, it's unbelievable. When I came here, we were talking about the Cubs, and to me, Wrigley Field is just the coolest ballpark there is. But I came here in '76, and it was almost like going to Wrigley Field. I mean, the ballpark's very similar. You sit very close to the players, a lot of bricks, and the best thing about it was the press boxes back then were on top of the roof.
Right.
And I remember calling my dad after I covered my first game, and I said, I'm like 50 feet above home plate. I said, I didn't know umpires cuss so much. But, I mean, you could hear everything they said when Jim Leland or Tony La Russa went out to argue. I mean, you heard everything.
Sure.
And then, I mean, we had to worry about being on the roof if a big wind came up, because it wasn't. Marvin Gray used to come up and get foul balls, and we had to worry about if there was a big storm. I mean, we could die, but I said, well, what better place to die than Bosse Field? So.
I think you bring up Marvin Gray. I think he opened that. Wasn't he there for the ribbon cutting?
Yeah, he was. We kid him. He's like 70, 71. If you got time, I think in in '76, Oklahoma City came in, and Jim Bunning, who's a Hall of Famer, he was manager for Oklahoma City, and Fred Hatfield was manager of the Triplets. They decided before the game it was Marvin's birthday, so they're going to raise money for Marvin and give it to him at home plate. They wheeled out this huge cake and present him with this cake, and I think the two teams raised like $300 or $400 and give it to Marvin. So the game finally starts, and after the game, Marvin's leaving. I said, Marvin, did you save me a piece of cake? And he says, nobody gets any of that cake. He was taking the cake home with him. We figured that he probably, ate off that for a month and kept it under his bed. But there was a guy back in the 30s, 40s, and early 50s named Ty Cobb, who was from Rockport, but he was the original Marvin Gray. He used to, with the Evansville Braves, he used to suit up and play catch, and he'd have rheumatic fever as a kid, and was had a special person. Mm-hmm. But I was reading about him the other day, and I'd always heard about him, but never read anything about him. He had to be related to Marvin somehow.
Sport and O'Brien, ESPN Evansville 105.3 and online, ESPNEvansville.com. Speaking with Dave Johnson, who is you're actually writing some pieces for the Courier-Press in regards to this 100-year anniversary.
Yeah, when we first started having meetings about what we were going to do, there's like 3 or 4 different committees, and I said, well, maybe I could, get Tim Etheridge down at the paper, who I used to work with. I said, maybe we can do some articles, and somebody says, well, how many do you think we could have? And I said, well, it's like 100 days. Maybe we could do 100 articles for 100 days, and I called him up, and I said, do you think you could do 100 or maybe 50? He says, well, it's 100 days. So I said, all right. And then as we're writing these, me and a couple other people, I'm going, this is like the worst idea I ever had, because every day and
100 days is a long
Tim
time.
has a little problem. I always tended to write long, and I still write long. And one day I said, are you going to need any art to go with, any pictures to go with that Pete Gray story? And he says, well, when it's 26 inches, I probably won't need any. I said, I thought it was like 10 or 12. It just flows so well.
Yeah, that's the word.
But
flow,
I mean, the
right?
neat thing about the articles is we're pointing out to people that it's not just baseball. They had rock concerts. They had presidential rallies, 10, 15,000 people, which is just amazing.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you're not originally from here, but explain what brought you to Evansville.
I was covering a Class A team in Burlington, Iowa, which was Charlie Finley's A's farm club. And my goal was always to cover big league baseball. Well, first it was to play it, and then when that didn't quite work out, it was to cover it. And I'd run into Al Dunning, who was sports editor of the Press. I met him at a seminar, and he wanted me to come here to work. And I said, there's only one way I'll do it. I said, if I could cover the Triplets. And he says, well, we've got a guy that does that. I said, well, if the job ever comes open. So he called me in the winter of '76, and he says, well, you know why I'm calling? I said, so the Triplets are open? He goes, yeah. So had me out, and I think I took a $15 pay cut, because I'd been an editor back there, and I said, well, I'll cover the Triplets, and that is the only reason I came here.
So you came to Evansville and sat on the roof at Bosse Field and hoped they didn't get a windstorm.
So people that aren't really happy with me over the years, then they can blame Dunning and Tom Tooley, who left.
When you first come to Evansville and you get to Bosse Field for the first time, do you remember your thoughts? I mean, did you feel like this is, at that time, probably historic may have not been the right word for it, but what was your overall take on the field itself at that time?
Well, it's just like I mentioned. I mean, it reminded me so much of Wrigley Field. Mm-hmm. When I grew up playing baseball in high school, we didn't even have none of the places we played even had fences. Mm-hmm. I mean, they might have a snow fence, but I mean, I see the bricks at Bosse Field. You see the press box on top. You see how expansive it was, and it just really felt like you had made the big time. Mm-hmm. But it was cozy too, because no matter where you sit, you're close to the players. So I mean, that's just what you just kind of fall in love with it, And I know Penny Marshall said when she came here for the League of Their Own, she just flew over the ballpark. She didn't even visit Bosse Field. She flew over in a plane and looks down and says, well, that's where I want to have the movie. So I mean, I think it has kind of the same effect on. It's run down, but all the old ballparks kind of smell the same.
Right.
I mean, you're in an old ballpark when you get to Bosse Field, even though it's a lot better shape than it was, years ago. They've done a lot of work on it, but it's just really cool. I hope that Evansville area people, feel how lucky they are to have this.
Appreciate it to some degree, because it's always just been there. It's one of those things that's always been. You drive down Heidelbach and there's Bosse Field. That's what it is. I don't think you stop long enough to and go. That's really. I mean, the third oldest active ballpark in the country behind Fenway and Wrigley.
And we have a lot of. We have a tendency in Evansville to tear down things.
Yeah.
And for the last 20, 25 years, I've been afraid that, they're going to tear down Bosse Field. But I think Bill Bussing's family probably saved that. The Otters came in '95 with Jim and Pam Miller, and then when the Bussings took over, I think they really saved
breathed some life
Field.
Into it. Yeah. Now there was a time, and I was reading one of the things you've written, one of your 100 pieces that you're working on.
I think we're only up to 41.
It was I don't remember the exact date. A couple of weeks ago, I was looking at it on the website. There was a time, though, where it was really run down. I mean, was it ever under consideration for being taken down?
In 57, I think it was at the end of the 57 season, it was in such disrepair that they were going to condemn it. And that's one reason the Milwaukee Braves moved out, is just because it was a
dump.
Yeah, and really people weren't supporting the team. Just a couple of days ago, I was writing a story about Don Notabart, who won 18 games in 56, and he had a 15-game winning streak on the line. He pitches at Bosse Field, and the attendance was 651. So, I mean, how bad is that? But I mean, the place, but the people that were there were fans, but there just weren't enough of them. It's kind of like with the triplets. But it got so bad in '57, they just said, we're going to have to do some major renovation. That's what they did. They also did it in '38, but it wasn't quite as bad in '38 as it was in '57.
Can you imagine that, though? I mean, if they shut that down in '57, I wasn't born until '64, so I would have never known a Bosse Field here.
Yeah, same here.
The triplets would have never been here.
Yeah,
and everything else that's happened. I mean, that just the whole thing. And we were talking a little bit as well in the segment before you joined us about the debacle that was the AA ball club they were going to bring in, and all the money we spent to try to get a stadium built downtown here. And they were talking about Bosse Field at that time, having to upgrade that. Maybe we can put a AA club in there. You have to put the skyboxes and the corporate suites and all the stuff that brings money into ballparks nowadays. And I thought that was a really good move that Evansville, I mean, obviously we didn't get the team, period, but they didn't need to do that to Bosse Field.
No, see, I was for a stadium downtown because it was going to be a Dodgers affiliate, but I didn't want anything to happen to Bosse Field. I was crossing my fingers that, are there enough people out there that will go to the games, and also is there enough advertising dollars to support both franchises? There's a big difference between Class A baseball, which is what it was, and independent baseball. A lot of fans that go to independent baseball would not go to affiliated, and vice versa. But it's probably a good move that they didn't come, because I'm not sure Bosse Field would survive. I always said, well, some people go here and some people go there. Don't make your schedules overlapping, but that was probably asking too much. But Bosse Field is probably more popular now than it was back then. Certainly, what has helped Bosse Field and the minor leagues, I think, the triplets didn't really draw well, no matter if they were winning the pennant or if they were the worst team in AAA. They always averaged about 1,100 to 1,400 people. And when the triplets left, that meant they were no longer grandfathered in. Ballparks have to be so much better now than they were back then. And once you left, well, sorry, but I don't think you could enhance Bosse Field well enough to build it back up to have a AA franchise, or maybe even an A franchise. But the back in the 70s, even the lights were so bad that you couldn't hardly see in the outfield. The infield was terrible. Bob Sykes, who pitched for the triplets and was traded for Willie McGee, he came back for an exhibition game one time. He told one of his players, he says, we used to have to wear a body jock just to play especially in the outfield, because you never knew where a bad hop was going to hit you. But I mean, you go to Bosse Field now, it's beautiful. It's just Bill Bussing's out there every night picking up trash. He doesn't know how to delegate anything. But I mean, it's a beautiful ballpark, and the Bussing family and the Otters have done a great job to keep it here.
That's one of the things, too, with the Bussing family. The EVSC, they play a lot of games there, and Bill Bussing makes sure, whether the Otters are playing or not, that field, like you said, is immaculate, ready to go. You know, high school kids, I don't know if they realize at 15, 16, 17 years old what kind of field they're playing on. But you're right, that field, day in and day out, all year long, is gorgeous. And that has a lot to do with the Bussing family.
Oh, yeah. When my son played, he played at North. And when he first got out to Bosse Field, I said, you don't realize how lucky you are. I mean, you're playing on a field that Warren Spahn played on, Hank Greenberg played on, Fidrich, not to mention all the guys from opposing teams that have played there. I'm putting together now a list of Hall of Famers that have been to Bosse Field, either players, managers, coaches, announcers, umpires. I did this 3 or 4 years ago for the Otters, and I came up with 45. Well, right now I'm at 81, and every day I'm finding, you're a Packers fan. I just found out yesterday we were doing a story on a 1940 exhibition game between the Bees and the Tigers, Evansville Bees and the Detroit Tigers, and the umpire was a guy by the name of Cal Hubbard. Well, Cal Hubbard is in the Baseball Hall of Fame as an umpire. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame because he was a Packers linebacker before anybody knew what a linebacker was.
Huh.
And then he's in the College Football Hall of Fame. And here's a guy that, I mean, he was at Bosse Field one day. Satchel Paige has been there. Dizzy Dean's been there. I mean, Tinkers to Evers and Chance. I don't think Tinkers was ever there, but Evers and Chance were there. John McGraw came for an exhibition game with the Giants in 23 and 24.
Well,
We haven't nailed down Ty Cobb or Babe Ruth yet, but I'm almost afraid to put the list together because somebody's going to, you forgot Ruth. I was out there. He signed my program in 44. So I mean, it's just unbelievable, the history that place has.
well, and that's the thing, too. It was a AAA club. So, I mean,
Right.
just one step down.
You
And
got them coming up and going, coming
they
down
sent
and
them
going
down to
up.
rehab. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was, I can remember, like I say, as a kid, I was a big baseball fan then. Not quite as much now, but, I can remember the thing, Mark the Bird Fidrich pitching, Jimmy Leland managing. And I could be totally wrong here, and that's why I ask you, because I know if I am, you'll tell me and you'll get it right, because you know everything that's happened out there. Did Thurman Munson play out there? Did he play for the Triplets?
No.
Okay, I don't know why I was thinking that.
No.
There was a catcher that obviously we were a Tigers affiliate.
Darryl Porter, was it?
That might be
Darryl
the one
Porter
I'm thinking
played
of.
there, yeah.
That might. I knew there was
He
there was a
played for
big time.
Evansville.
Yeah, and it was. Again, I was younger than. Yes, I was young once, but it was mid-70s.
You know my
or something,
rule.
but-
You can tell me you were young, but I still picture you the same way, just shorter. That's
Yeah,
it.
no, the same voice.
Yeah, 12-year-old with some
Color
salt,
in my hair.
salt and pepper hair, and a mustache, talking like that. That's what I picture a young Jimmy Ford to look like.
Yeah.
Well, see,
well,
when
it
you're
was that.
covering AAA, you get guys coming down for rehab.
Mm-hmm.
You get guys that maybe, Fidrich had arm problems, so he went up in 75, came back down in 79. I tell people that on Mother's Day, I think it was 1980, Wichita was in town to play the Triplets, Mother's Day afternoon. The pitchers were Fidrich for the Triplets and Ed Figueroa, who has won 20 games twice. Well, he's on his down. It was Texas Farm Club. He's on his way down. And the DH was Bobby Bonds.
Wow.
And he's at the end of his career. And so you've got these three guys in the lineup, and there's 550 people in the stands, which is why the Triplets left, because it's just people,
Right.
like I say, they don't realize what they didn't realize what they had, and once they were gone, you were never going to get them back.
And it had to have been somewhat affordable, because I know my
Oh,
mom
yeah,
is a
yeah.
single mother busting her butt out at Whirlpool. She wasn't sending me to no big-time expensive game. And I went to a lot of games. I mean, it was a fun time, and still is. But how much did League of Their Own do for that ballpark?
Well, yeah, I was going to get to that. To me, League of Their Own, the Triplets left in 84. Right after that, I think in 91 was the League of Their Own. And there were some other baseball movies like Major League,
Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams, and there was one where they were hosing down the infield because they didn't want to play, whatever the name of that one was. But anyway, I think people that watched those and said, man, minor league baseball, that's pretty cool. I wish we had a team. And I think all of a sudden minor league baseball became really big, and it was a cool thing to do. Now, if the triplets could have held on another 10 years, I don't think we would have lost the triplets, because I think, you figure the triplets were averaging 14, 15, 1,600. The Otters averaged 3,500.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and one reason the Otters average that much is because, it's a family thing. And back when the triplets were there, the families really didn't come much, and the tickets were not expensive. The triplets had 28 businessmen on their board of directors that were part owners, and they were all giving tickets away, whether it was Wesselman or, so you could get the tickets. It just what people just, I think they become complacent when you've had something so long, you take it for granted, and that's what happened to the triplets.
Dave Johnson joining us in studio. It's Ford and O'Brien, ESPN Evansville 105.3 online, ESPNEvansville.com. We had somebody call us. We mentioned that you were coming in earlier, and we had somebody call and wanted to ask you this question, and I said I would do so. Do you know anything about, they want to know about a fatality that occurred during a game in the 20s, or is that an urban legend?
Yeah, there was I think that's already been in the, Steve Ford wrote about it, but it was a guy for the Decatur Commies who was
the Decatur Commies.
It was the real name was the real name was the Decatur, Illinois Commodores was their name.
Okay.
But headline writers called them
the
Commies. Yeah,
because you had like Twitter, you can only have so many. Yeah. Okay.
And but anyway, Decatur Commodores. It was a batter, and he got hit by a pitch, and they took the guy off the field, and they took him to the hospital, and they thought he was going to live, and all of a sudden he had an aneurysm.
Wow.
And died.
Huh.
And I'm told there was another high school kid back in the 60s that I haven't been able to check into it. I can't find it, but somebody said there was a high school kid that got killed at Bosse Field too.
Oh.
So
now you bring up Steve Ford, and Ryan had mentioned earlier we got it a little mixed up. Steve's writing the book. You're writing the 100 articles for the 100 day and other. But Steve, with this book, obviously you and Steve Ford worked together several years.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, Steve was a pretty good quarterback out of Central, wasn't he? Or am I just
he
bragging
says
up
he
on
was.
him?
I wasn't. I wasn't here then.
He's a lot older,
and I haven't seen any clippings.
He's a lot older than I am, so I was too little to tell.
Yeah, you probably idolized him, but can't remember why. The book is done. It's coming out in May, and he's written a bunch of the little, we call them flashbacks in the paper, and a guy by the name of Jeff Bosse has done some. Jeff Bosse wrote a book about his great uncle, who was Benjamin Bosse.
Mm-hmm. I graduated from Bosse. So.
Yeah, so I mean, it's when everybody boosts, everybody wins. I told him that's why we need help, on these stories. So if you guys want to write one, you guys are radio guys. I'll tell you, in the strike season '81, when baseball major leagues were out on strike, the Cub announcers, which were Lou Boudreau and Vince Lloyd, came in for an exhibition game between the Triplets and Iowa because they had nobody to cover. And then the Tigers were the Triplets parent club. And George Kell and Al Kaline came in, along with Ernie Harwell and Paul. I don't remember Paul's last name. He was Harwell's buddy. But they're sitting up in the press box doing the game. So that was that was cool, too. I remember Kaline and Kell said, I was doing a column then every other week for the Detroit Free Press. They said, would you come in and spend an inning with us, and tell us about some of the prospects? Fastest inning, I mean, it was like 9 pitches. Well, we really appreciate your being on here, and thanks for all that information. And if there's ever another strike, we'll invite you back.
Well, we certainly appreciate the time. We'll have to have you back sometime soon because there's so much more to cover about this field as it turns 100 years old on June 17th. Bosse Field, it's just a place you go, and it's a great time when you've got an Otters game to go, and I know they've got some celebrations and whatnot planned throughout the course of the Otters season. Dave, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much for coming by, and again, we'll have to have you back in sometime over the course of the summer, and we'll talk a little bit more.